Let's get uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable. Imagine this. For your entire life, you've been carrying something. A presence. A weight. Not some spiritual mumbo-jumbo. Not a curse in the traditional sense. Something worse. Something internal. It moves with you. It is you. But not the you people see. It's your shadow. The version of yourself that hides behind every panic spiral, every irrational outburst, every moment where things collapse just when they're going well. You think you made that decision. But was it you? Or the part of you trying to protect an old wound? That's the sick twist. It's not trying to ruin you. It thinks it's saving you. But it's saving you from joy, from love, from vulnerability. Because once upon a time, those things brought pain. So your system built walls, and you called those walls me. Have you felt it? That strange echo inside your head, your own voice, but colder, sharper. You're going to fail. No one really likes you. You're too much, or maybe not enough. That voice doesn't hate you. It guards you from memory, from danger that isn't there anymore, but still feels real. So now you live in loops, emotional relapses that don't make sense, self-sabotage that strikes the moment you're close to something good. You punish yourself quietly. You distract yourself loudly. You pretend it's all fine when something inside is quietly screaming. And here's the part no one talks about. That chaos? It's not weakness. It's not drama. It's not even trauma anymore. It's a signal, a code your soul's been sending for years, and you've ignored it until it had to scream. You're not broken. You're overloaded. Spiritually, emotionally, neurologically overloaded. That's why you don't trust calm. Why peace makes you anxious. Why connection feels dangerous. You're running a system built for chaos. Because once, chaos felt safer than love. And now, you feel like you're too sensitive, too intense, too everything. And maybe you are, but not in a bad way. In a rare way. In a necessary way. People feel you before you speak. That energy makes them squirm, not because there's something wrong with you, but because you remind them of something they've repressed. You wake them up, and they resent you for it. But none of this is accidental. Your shadow, your intensity, your discomfort, they're not flaws. They're clues, indicators that something in you refuses to die quietly. That part of you, buried under years of pretending, is trying to rise, and it won't stop. Not until you stop distracting yourself. Not until you stop medicating your truth with noise. Not until you finally pay attention. Because your shadow doesn't want to destroy you. It wants to free you. Let's talk about something few people dare to explore. The curse of consciousness. Not morality, not ethics. I'm talking about that raw, brutal awareness that doesn't let you rest. The kind that keeps you awake at 2 a.m., replaying conversations, questioning your every move. While others seem to float on autopilot, you can't help but feel everything. And that sensitivity? It doesn't make life richer. It makes it heavier. Because when you see too much, you feel too much. And when you feel too much, your system begins to crack. So what do? You build coping mechanisms. You start crafting a life that looks functional, even impressive. But behind the scenes, you're fraying. You scroll for hours without knowing why. You isolate without explanation. You latch onto rituals, addictions, behaviors that numb just enough to survive another day. But here's the secret no one tells you. There is no madness in this, only undigested truth. Because your perception doesn't have filters. You feel the emotional temperature of a room the moment you walk in. You hear the words behind the words. You decode silences that others miss. And all of that information has to go somewhere. So it goes into your body, your nerves, your habits. That's where the compulsions start. Not from pleasure, but from overload. You're not addicted. You're overloaded. And when you finally get a brief hit of relief through food, distraction, sex, control, the nervous system lets go for just a moment. It thinks you found a solution, even if it's killing you. That's the mind's brutal logic. This hurts, but it works. And you, the conscious one, you know it. But knowledge isn't enough. You've read the books, done the journaling, watched the podcasts, and yet the pattern repeats. Because logic doesn't heal pain. Presence does. Not presence for others, presence with yourself. But that's hard, right? Because when you finally slow down, when there's silence, the sadness creeps in. The guilt, the hunger, the shame. It's easier to keep moving, keep helping, keep fixing, anything but feel. And yet that's the trap. The more conscious you become, the more elegant your avoidance gets. You no longer need chaos. You avoid yourself through productivity, spiritual bypassing, overthinking. You say, "I've worked on that," when all you did was bury it under insight. Here's the brutal truth. Your shadow isn't just made of your flaws. It's made of your unmet needs, the ones you're too proud to admit, too scared to feel, too conditioned to allow. And until you give yourself permission to need, to rage, to cry, to long, you'll keep feeding the pattern you claim to hate. Because your pain didn't come from desire. It came from denial. Let's talk about why it's so hard to break the cycle. You already know the pattern. Things start to go well. Finally. You feel hopeful, maybe even excited. But somewhere deep down, a small voice whispers, "This won't last." And suddenly, you sabotage it. You push people away. You procrastinate. You quit before it gets real. Why? Because pain, even when it's unbearable, is familiar. It's predictable. You've lived in it for so long that it's become your baseline. It's not that you like it. It's that your nervous system recognizes it. But joy, peace, actual well-being, those feel foreign, suspicious, like walking barefoot on a floor you've always believed was covered in glass. So your system panics. Not because things are bad, but because things are new. And your brain doesn't crave happiness. It craves safety. And if chaos was your childhood safety net, then guess what? That's where you'll unconsciously return, again and again. This is why self-sabotage isn't stupidity. It's memory. It's your emotional system saying, "I know how to survive this. I don't know how to survive joy." So you cling to what you hate. The toxic partner, the empty habit, the self-doubt. Not because you want to, but because somewhere in your wiring, that's where your body feels most familiar, most at home. And that's why willpower doesn't work. This isn't about discipline. It's about reprogramming. You don't need to be stronger. You need to be softer with yourself. Curious. Present. You need to stop fighting your patterns like enemies and start listening to them like messages. Because your impulses, they're not random. They're language. Every compulsion is a sentence your body is trying to write. Every craving, every fear, every loop, it's trying to tell you, "I'm holding pain you still haven't felt." You've spent years trying to outthink it, to fix it with logic, to push through it with productivity. But you can't outrun what lives in your chest. You have to feel it. But that's scary, isn't it? Because feeling means surrender. It means letting go of control, of the identity you built around being strong, independent, fine. But fine is killing you. And underneath it all is a truth you've avoided for too long. You don't lack control. You lack permission. Permission to rest, to say no, to be angry, to want more, to feel what you feel without shame. Because your patterns, they're not rooted in addiction. They're rooted in emotional hunger, in needs you weren't allowed to express, in feelings you were told were too much. So now you carry them in secret. You mask them with productivity, with caretaking, with pretending. But inside, you know, you feel the pressure building, the fatigue, the collapse that's always one step away. And here's the thing. This isn't a flaw in your character. This is your body begging you to stop pretending, to stop managing your emotions like tasks, and to start honoring them like truth. If this message resonates with you, if you feel the truth of it in your bones, click the subscribe button. Thank you for being here. Now let's go even deeper. What if the pain you carry was never yours to begin with? What if the fear, the guilt, the anxiety that surges through your body didn't start in your story, but in someone else's? This isn't fantasy. This is emotional inheritance. You didn't just inherit your eye color or your posture. You inherited patterns, survival codes, emotional scripts passed down through generations like invisible heirlooms. That overwhelming sadness you can't explain, that fear of setting boundaries, that guilt for simply choosing yourself. They might not be yours. They might be echoes from your mother's silence, your father's rage, your grandmother's sacrifices, the unspoken rules your family lived by. Rules like, don't feel too much, don't want too much, don't be too much. And you, highly sensitive, deeply aware, absorbed it all, not just with your mind, with your body, because the body keeps score. It stores the emotional memory of everything you weren't allowed to express, and everything they weren't allowed to feel. So now, when you try to change, when you dare to set a boundary or speak your truth, you feel it. That internal backlash, that strange, sudden guilt, like you've broken a rule, like you've betrayed something sacred. That's not random. It's a signal from your nervous system. It's telling you, this isn't how we survive. This isn't how we stay safe. But here's the paradox. What once kept your lineage alive is now keeping you from fully living. You're not just breaking habits. You're breaking generational agreements. And that hurts. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're doing it first. You're the first to pause instead of react. The first to say, I matter too. The first to feel the full weight of the story and still choose to write a new one. That's not weakness. That's revolution. But revolution is lonely. Most won't understand. They'll say you're being selfish, overdramatic, difficult. Because when you step out of the role you were given, you become unpredictable. And unpredictable people don't make others feel safe. But you're not here to keep others comfortable. You're here to heal what they couldn't. And yes, it's confusing. Some days you'll doubt yourself. You'll wonder if you're making it all up, if you're just broken. But you're not broken. You're breaking through. You're feeling pain that was never processed. You're grieving things no one else acknowledged. You're giving voice to what was always whispered. And that's why it feels like too much, because it is too much for one person. But that's what generational healing looks like. It's not pretty, it's not poetic, it's work, quiet, messy, sacred. And here's the hardest part. No one will clap for you. There's no audience, no medal. Just you, waking up every day, trying to live in a way no one showed you was possible. That's not a setback. That's the beginning. So what do you do when everything you've known starts to fall apart? When the mask no longer fits, the roles feel empty, and your strength, once a badge of honor, becomes the weight that's drowning you? You begin again. Not in the way they sell it in shiny motivational clips, but in the raw, real way. You start from the rubble, from the pieces of yourself you once buried to survive, from the parts of you that don't know how to smile on command anymore. This collapse, it's not a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. Your identity is unraveling, but only because it was stitched from performance, from trauma responses, from who you thought you had to be. And now, your truth is pushing through the seams. So yes, it's terrifying. You don't know who you are without the mask, without the validation, without the constant pressure to be okay. But here's the quiet miracle. In that emptiness, your real self has space to breathe. And this is where the real work begins, not in fixing yourself, but in learning to love what's underneath. You rebuild self-esteem, not the kind built on achievements or approval, but emotional self-esteem, the kind that holds you even when you're a mess, the kind that doesn't flinch when you fail, the kind that whispers, "I still choose you," even when no one else does. Because most of us learn to see ourselves through other people's eyes. We became who they needed, who they praised, who they could tolerate, and in doing so, we abandoned who we actually are. Now you have a choice. Keep playing the role or start living your truth. But truth isn't glamorous. It's not always strong or graceful. Sometimes it cries. Sometimes it says no. Sometimes it has nothing to give. And that's okay. You don't owe anyone the polished version of your pain. You're not here to be digestible. You're here to be real. That means learning to disappoint others if it means not betraying yourself. That means letting go of the identity that earned you love, but cost you your authenticity. Because if you only feel valuable when you're performing, then deep down, you'll always feel replaceable. And you're not. You're not here to carry everyone. You're not here to keep the peace at the expense of your own. If your presence makes people uncomfortable, let it. It's not your job to shrink so others feel safe. It's your job to wake up, to grow, to burn what no longer fits. You didn't come here to blend in. You came to remember who you were before the world told you to be someone else. And yes, it hurts. It always does before the clarity comes. But this pain, it's sacred. It's honest. It means you're no longer asleep. And now, the work becomes simple, but not easy. Be who you are, even when it shakes everything around you. Now listen closely, because this part goes straight to your nervous system. You don't have to be on high alert all the time. You don't have to anticipate danger, read every expression, prepare for every emotional storm before it even arrives. You're not in danger anymore. But your body doesn't know that yet. It still flinches. It still tightens. It still operates like you're living in the middle of a battlefield, even when nothing's happening. That's why you overthink. That's why you can't sleep. That's why your appetite disappears or explodes. It's not dysfunction. It's conditioning. You were wired to survive, not to rest. And now that things are quieter, your body doesn't trust it. Peace feels like exposure. Relaxation feels like a setup. Calm feels like the moment before the chaos, so your system never fully lets go. And the tragic part? You've normalized it. You've built an entire life on top of tension. You've achieved, helped, smiled, performed, all while your nervous system was in a state of quiet panic. And maybe you've managed to keep it together on the outside, but inside, your body's been screaming, "Please, let me rest." So how do you teach your system that the war is over? Not through mantras, not through forced positivity, but through consistent acts of truth. You learn to say no when you mean no. You let yourself rest when you're tired. You stop explaining yourself. You stop rescuing people who never asked you to. You stop auditioning for love. And when the guilt comes, as it will, you breathe through it. Because guilt is just the echo of old survival strategies. It's not a sign that you're doing something wrong. It's a sign that you're doing something new. And yes, it will feel strange at first. Unnatural. Maybe even selfish. But that's because you've confused self-abandonment with virtue. You thought being good meant being invisible. Being generous meant being empty. Not anymore. Now the work is to feel safe in yourself. To stop waiting for permission to slow down. To stop demanding perfection before you allow yourself kindness. Your body has lived in tension for so long that softness feels dangerous. But with time, with care, with repetition, it begins to trust again. It starts to understand that you're not going to abandon it, that you're not going to keep pushing it until it breaks. And then, something shifts. The compulsion starts to fade, not because you forced it, but because you no longer need it. You're not escaping anymore. You're inhabiting yourself. Fully, present, grounded. And that's when real healing begins. Not as a goal to chase, but as a way of living. Something changes when you finally come home to yourself. The urges, the addictions, the destructive habits, they don't vanish overnight. But they begin to lose their grip. Not because you conquered them, but because you no longer need them. You see, most of what you called bad habits weren't about pleasure. They were about survival. They were attempts to self-soothe when no one else knew what you were holding. You weren't seeking thrills. You were seeking silence, relief, a pause from the war inside your skin. And when you stop running from that war, when you sit with yourself, listen, and actually feel what's been buried, you begin to realize something. You were never the problem. The chaos inside you was never your enemy. It was your signal, your most honest language. And now, instead of numbing it, you're decoding it. You're learning to translate the tension, the sadness, the impulse. You're learning to stay with yourself in the discomfort. That changes everything. Because when you finally hold space for your emotions, without judgment, without rushing, without needing them to make sense, you stop needing so many escapes. The endless scrolling, the late-night binges, the compulsive overthinking. They fade, not because you defeated them, but because you stopped abandoning the part of you that needed them. Your nervous system starts to slow down. Your breath gets deeper. You catch yourself pausing before reacting, choosing instead of defaulting. And no, it's not perfect. You still fall. You still forget. You still slip into old patterns. But now you catch yourself with compassion, not condemnation. You begin to understand that healing doesn't mean never falling again. It means you don't stay down for long. It means you fall more gently. And when you rise wiser. You stop needing chaos to feel alive. You stop craving suffering as proof of your strength. You stop demanding a crisis just to feel worthy of rest. Instead, you give yourself permission to feel, to breathe, to take up space. And that's what no one teaches you. That when you finally allow yourself to be, without the performance, without the mask, without the apology, you realize your sensitivity is not a curse. It's a compass. Your emotional intensity isn't something to tame. It's something to listen to. It holds information others miss. It sees beneath the surface. It senses what isn't being said. It burns away the illusion. That kind of depth. It's rare. It's raw. And yes, it's hard to carry. But it's also your gift. And once you learn how to hold it without breaking, you stop seeing yourself as too much. You start seeing yourself as exactly what this world needs. Someone awake, honest, and unafraid to feel. And that changes not just you, it changes everything. There comes a moment, quiet, almost invisible, when you realize something profound. You're not healing to become someone new. You're healing to remember who you were before the world told you to be someone else. And from that moment forward, everything shifts. You stop obsessing over becoming better. You stop chasing perfection. You begin to see the real mission. Not self-improvement, but self-reclamation. Because all this time, your soul hasn't been asking you to upgrade. It's been begging you to come back. Back to the part of you that was wild, that felt deeply, that knew how to trust its instincts before fear stepped in and told you not to. Back to the you that didn't perform for love, but radiated it freely. That didn't filter itself to be accepted because it hadn't yet learned to feel ashamed. And now, that version of you is still in there. It's not gone. It's just buried, under years of pretending, pleasing, pushing. That's what your pain has been pointing to all along. The breakdowns, the triggers, the panic, the guilt, they've all been invitations, cracked windows in the walls you built around your own truth. And now, the walls are crumbling, not because you're weak, but because you're ready. Ready to stop apologizing for your needs, ready to stop shrinking so others feel comfortable, ready to stop mistaking being low maintenance for being emotionally starved. This is where the real revolution begins, not out there, but inside you. It begins when you stop negotiating your worth, when you stop trying to be lovable and start being honest. Because what if the goal isn't to be liked, but to be true? What if your power isn't in your perfection, but in your ability to stand in your mess with your head high? That kind of honesty is rare. It terrifies people. It challenges the system. And most of all, it frees you. Because once you taste truth, even a little, you can't go back. You stop entertaining things that drain you. You stop tolerating connections that require your silence. You stop hustling for crumbs when you are always worthy of the feast. And the best part? You start to see that your shadow, the part of you you spent years hiding, isn't your enemy. It's your engine. It's the part of you that kept screaming when everything else went quiet. The part that wouldn't let you numb all the way. The part that dragged you into chaos, not to destroy you, but to get your attention. So now, you don't fight your shadow. You thank it. You sit with it. Listen to it. Let it teach you how to return to yourself, piece by piece. Because in the end, this journey was never about becoming someone else. It was about finally being you, completely, unapologetically, and without delay. So now we've arrived at the edge. You've looked at the parts of yourself you once feared. You've faced the voice in your head that told you to shrink. You've stared down the chaos and called it by its name. And now there's one final question. Who are you? If you stop fighting yourself, not who will you become, not what will you achieve, but simply, who are you when the war ends? Because that's the truth no one tells you. Most people don't fear failure. They fear freedom. Because freedom means no more excuses, no more masks, no more hiding behind wounds and identities. Freedom demands honesty. It asks you to stop blaming the past, stop waiting for approval, stop proving your worth, and start living like you already belong. But that's hard, right? Because when you've worn struggle like skin, peace feels naked. When your value came from endurance, rest feels like weakness. And when pain was the currency for love, joy feels like theft. But it's not. Joy is your birthright. Peace is not a reward, it's a return. So let me tell you something you may not believe yet. You're allowed to stop performing. You're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to feel joy without waiting for the backlash. You're allowed to walk away from what no longer feeds your soul, even if it once saved you. You don't owe anyone your suffering. And if your voice shakes when you speak your truth, say it anyway. If your hands tremble when you set boundaries, draw the line anyway. If you feel guilt when you choose rest over burnout, rest anyway. Because healing isn't a straight line. It's a revolution inside your nervous system. It's a reintroduction to yourself after years of exile. It's learning to recognize your own light in the dark. And sometimes it's quiet. There's no applause, no dramatic breakthrough, just you, sitting with yourself, breathing through the ache, choosing not to abandon yourself again. That is healing. That is power. And if you've made it this far, if every word has felt like it was written directly to you, it's not a coincidence. It's because you're ready to stop waiting for permission, ready to stop negotiating with your worth, ready to walk into the unknown, guided not by fear, but by truth. And maybe you'll still fall, maybe you'll still forget, but now you'll know. Your pain is not a sign you're broken, it's a message. And your shadow? It's not what's holding you back, it's what's been pushing you to wake up. So as we end this journey, I won't leave you with advice. I'll leave you with a question, one that might follow you, whispering in the spaces where silence used to hurt. Who would you be if you stopped fighting against yourself? You already know the answer. Now go live it.